Hello, good afternoon. Welcome. You've just joined us virtually to this breakout session, and a warm welcome to everybody that's actually in the room in person. This session is entitled How 5G Can Enable Scotland's Digital Future. I'm joined physically by Alan Lee, Scotland Director, Corporate and Public Sector BT, Simon Haston, Scotland CTIO for BT, and from a distance by Julie Snell, Chair for the Scotland 5G Centre via video link. So I'm going to run through some questions. I want to put them for a start, and then there's an opportunity for any of you in the room or at a distance to ask questions too. We'll work exactly the same system. We'll get a microphone to you. So I'm going to start off with Alan. Simple one, maybe not simple one. What is BT's role in bringing 5G to Scotland, and how does that fit in with other forms of connectivity?
Yeah, I think that's a question we get asked quite a lot. What part does 5G play in other technologies that we're doing? But ultimately, we are rolling 5G out to make sure that everyone across the country has the connectivity and the access that they need to transform their lives. 5G is going to transform people's lives. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Everywhere we go, every day something comes up that says that the connectivity and the 5G network will enable different technologies. Just downstairs, we were listening to one of the companies talking about social care and how we can actually work out people who are in need of care, what they're doing within their home, how they might need medical care, how they might need other care, and 5G is going to enable all that to happen. So the question of what's BT's part in it? Well, we are a communication provider who will absolutely deploy this at the fastest rate that anyone's doing. We should have most of the country covered, we reckon, by about 2026, the rest of it probably by about 2028. But we're looking to accelerate that as well because we understand how important some of this technology is. And also, it may well become more affordable for some areas of the country as well, maybe more affordable than necessarily fibre or other Wi-Fi technologies too. So I think our part is to lead the way, is to make people understand the benefit it can deliver for them in their lives, the benefit it can deliver to businesses as they look to become more efficient and more automated, and really to enable this buzzword that we use at the moment around smart this, smart city, smart venue, smart whatever, but actually use it to bring it to life with true life applications and changes that it's going to make to how business and people operate.
Okay. Julie, what is the Scotland 5G Centre's role? What does it do?
So the Scotland 5G Centre was set up by the Scottish Government because it won't be a surprise to anyone in that room and probably those dialing in that the wonderful, glorious countryside of Scotland, classified 98% of it is rural or ultra-rural. And that tends to make the business case much harder, as well as the physical work of rolling out any network, whether it is a fibre network, 3G, 4G, 5G. So it tends to need a little bit more focus on how we bring together the business cases that will help the likes of BT to actually develop a model that will roll out, that connectivity. And then on top of that, our key role is to make sure that the people in Scotland and the businesses absolutely understand how they can make the most of it and how we ensure they don't get left behind as this digital evolution moves forward. Because the reality is, I think it's 27% of the GDP for Scotland comes out of rural Scotland. And they're doing that without the benefit of some of the connectivity you would get, say, in a city. So you can imagine for us, if you can move that dial and you can enable them to use digital technology in a way that will benefit their businesses, it will make a significant step change for Scotland. And there's the other side of it, because if you don't do it, they're going to get left behind because the rest of the world is moving to the digital cow. There's the agriculture that gets monitored, the fisheries that are utilizing 5G, to monitor the salmon stock, etc. So our job is to try and bring all of those things together to give the industry a focal point so that we can focus the efforts and to build those layered business cases that will help bring it together in a more cost-effective way.
Okay, thank you. And Simon, what do you reckon the main challenges of 5G and its adoption are likely to be?
Yes, I think can everyone hear me?
I don't know. Can we hear? Keep speaking.
Obviously the clear challenge is you've got to have 5G to exploit it. it's very early days with 5G, the rollout, certainly from a consumer rollout. We're only really 2 years into that rollout. As Alan says, there's another sort of 6 years before it's hugely accessible to most people. I think from our perspective, we look at 5G two ways. One is a consumer play. So it's great for your videos and your downloading. We focus very much on working with businesses and public sector and organizations is how can you exploit that for better places. And some of the challenges are obviously getting coverage, but also the type of coverage you can get with 5G is quite different. You can have open public 5G or you can have private 5G. The next challenge is then finding what's the problem you're trying to solve here. And that problem could be in healthcare, could be agri-tech, could be public sector, could be environmental. And what we do is we work very closely, and indeed, Julie, we work with the Scottish 5G Centre. We have a project in Stirling, which we partner with academia, businesses, the Scottish Government, ourselves. We all co-invest and we trial use cases. So we test the use of 5G, in a fairly open environment. Doesn't always work. It's we do fail sometimes, but we test use cases, whether that's healthcare, environmental monitoring, movement of people, things, and we don't just test the technology. We test the business models and cultural uptake. So we actually, the real challenge is getting the network out there. It's what you use it for. And as Julie alluded to, it's not just about 5G. It's a whole ecosystem. So it's all connectivity, but also data and applications and how they all work together, and what we would term a digital fabric. So it's very much not looking at it as just one technology, but a collection of technologies.
So if the issue is the integrity of the digital fabric, Alan, presumably partnerships are going to be pretty key in this.
Yeah, I mean, there's partnering that comes in kind of 3 levels for us. We partner obviously with our other technology partners, such as Nokia, Ericsson, to deliver the network itself. We then want to make sure that we're working really closely with central bodies like the Scottish 5G Centre, who we're big partners of, to make sure that we are working with them to go to the areas that it's going to make the most difference. I think the most important partnerships are the ones that we have with customers as well, though, because I think everyone who works in Scotland is incredibly proud of a couple of things we've done. One in particular, which is what we call an immersive classroom in North Lanarkshire. So taking that technology to a really deprived area, one of the most deprived in Europe, and really providing, using the 5G technology to provide an immersive experience for kids who would never get the opportunity to do these things. So you can take them to Serengeti, you can take them to the Great Barrier Reef, you can take them to Great Wall of China, things they could only ever hope to experience. And we can develop that even further into live streaming and various other things too. So really the ability to, again, change people's lives, give them experiences that they've never had before, is absolutely crucial to us, and we want to roll that out even more. So I guess, anyone who wants to partner with us in that type of thing, we're more than delighted to talk to them. Yeah.
Okay, any thoughts on partnerships, Julie?
Partnerships for me are absolutely critical. For me, this is the era of collaboration. These things don't happen in isolation now. And I think for me, when you look at it, the step to 5G is not just the consumer play. It's no longer just about our mobile phone. It's about all the IoT devices. It's about data. And the technology behind that is quite sophisticated now. So the challenge for us is, one, we have to educate everybody as to the benefits and the opportunities that come with it. And no one party can do that on their own. It has to be done through partnership and through collaboration, with academia, with businesses, with SMEs, with enterprises, because we're all learning. There is no one single silver bullet that's going to make 5G, wow. It is all about collaboration and learning and building those business cases. So a partnership, as far as I'm concerned, is the only way to make this sort of 5G high bandwidth fiber journey work.
Simon, there was a comment made in one of the speakers this morning that technology doesn't equal innovation. Technology enables innovation. Now, you have obviously got ideas in your head at the moment of what 5G will allow you to do. There's going to be surprises. There's going to be a heap of stuff in there that possibly haven't been thought of yet.
Well, yeah, and that 5G, sometimes it's a technology looking for a problem. It kind of is, but that's a good thing, because it opens up doors. Now, how we work is we don't have the ideas. We can supply the technology, bit of investment, It's customers that have the ideas, and we work with customers on a particular problem. And some of those, actually, we don't know what the future is going to look like. And I think there's, 5G can be used for specific use cases that require low latency, high bandwidth, like immersive experiences. But as Julie points out, it's also about, I think I read somewhere that, mobile data is going up 40% every year. We've seen brilliant examples at this conference of how mobile has been used for healthcare. And we're not just buying books anymore. It's part of our daily life. So it's about that mass machine to machine as well. So it's a journey. It's we're all on that journey, and I think it's a fantastic journey. And Scotland is brilliantly placed to exploit it.
Every time, Julia, there's been an advance in technologies, there's one from 3G to 4G now, about to go into 5G and things, fiber optics, you name it. Rural areas and ultra-rural areas have always lagged behind because the business case makes much more sense to stick it in a city. To them that hath shall be given more. Is there any way of actually addressing that and making sure that doesn't happen this time?
Well, I don't think it's a question of whether it doesn't happen. I think the whole point is, and that's why the Scottish Government had the wisdom to set up the 5G Centre, was this understanding that we had to drive that into rural areas. And we had to go and find out what is it that's going to drive it. So, a lot of people have learned a lot more about farming as a result of Jeremy Clarkson's farming show. I don't know how many of you have seen that. It's the first time I really enjoyed his program. And I learned so much about it, but it pieced together other bits of information that we are working with in rural Scotland, in that now technology could well be driving that combine harvester that is now doing the straight line that Caleb would absolutely demand. And it is managing the crops. It's understanding, you've got IoT devices monitoring the water level and the nutrition. You've now got cows that are carrying digital monitors, and the digital monitor is then filling in the data. Where's that cow been? What's its history? Which is critical now to the supply chain into the food industry, because they demand to have this data now. So it's about automating that data. But for us, it's about pulling that case together. So if you went to a rural area, say for instance, you may be looking at the healthcare needs of that community. They may be very remote. The local hospital could be 100 miles away. You can look at using, camera technology that would enable them to be examined and diagnosed at home. That builds part of the business case. You then got all your local authority, connectivity that needs to be layered onto that. Then you look at the farming needs, the tourist needs, and then the small businesses and enterprises. You build up those layers, and suddenly the rural business case starts to stack up, and the justifications for BT are so much easier to say, right, we're going to literally target this area, and we will make sure that the technology supports these different layers of need that are coming through. And a part of what we're doing in the centre is opening up these little hubs so that people can come and start using the technology, start work out how does that support their business, how does it work, what does it need to do, because it's as much a learning curve for everybody in rural as it is us from the industry side to understand what would their needs be now and what is the different way that we have to configure the technology to support the different pieces, from education to healthcare, to farming, to agriculture, etc.
I don't think anyone would contest the fact that, that there is a need for it in rural areas too, and that people think it would be fundamentally a very good thing. My point, however, though, was how do you ensure it actually gets to the rural areas? What's the time scale of that? Why would you go to a rural area first rather than go into Glasgow?
Well, no, I think there's lots of things, and it's a kind of layered approach. We deliver, we're delivering, one of the biggest infrastructure programs in the whole of Europe, which we said we were going to do during the middle of a pandemic and an economic downturn. Once we start to do that, we can build the coverage out from that. But one thing that's really interesting about the word rural, I think, is, Julie's articulated what you think is true rural. This is farms, etc., and little villages and stuff. There are a lot of people who, last week I heard someone define Paisley as rural, right? And I think, we need to get ourselves to grips with what we're actually talking about here. There are some difficulties clearly in reaching some areas, but certainly BT are at the forefront of building towards all those different areas. We really understand that it's really important if you're in Benbecula and you need to be able to, get a consultant, to be able to diagnose something really importantly, that you need that connectivity to be able to make that happen. Those are real differences you can make to society. So in terms of how we build that out, we will do it in conjunction with how we're rolling out our fibre first rollout plan as well, which we're delivering faster, quicker, safer than anyone else. And as I keep saying, I'm not going to keep apologising for that. We're doing it, and we're doing it, without anyone asking us to do it. So I think it's coming. There are more and more areas. Most of the big cities have got a decent amount of 5G coverage as well. I was really pleased to walk out of Waverley, and pretty much all the walk down here was all fully 5G covered. I'm off to a wonderful stadium, DT21 later on as well, and see where we're up to with that too. So lots of areas being covered. I think there are more and more rural areas coming on board, and you'll start to see that picking up the pace on that really, really quickly as we augment with a fibre rollout plan.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Question right at the back. If you could identify yourself as well.
Yeah, Ian Dugan from SSE. So I work in the transmission business. We cover an area the size of Belgium, some of the most rural parts of Scotland in terms of our towers and our substations. At what point does 5G become a viable option for us? Is probably my first question, because at the minute we're kind of putting more fibre in, and we've also got options like Starlink in terms of the sort of the low orbit satellites. So when does that become something that actually we could have confidence that some of our lone workers could have coverage across this piece? And I guess the second question is, if we're using for operational technology in terms of critical national infrastructure, how do we guarantee the safety and security of 5G? Because at the minute, people are very risk averse with that. So how do we deal with that?
Okay, two separate questions. Who wants to take the first one?
Alan's looking at me. Yeah, it's quite a big question. I think it's about what's the problem you're trying to solve. If it's lone workers, there's operational, 5G absolutely has a role, and there's different types of 5G. You could upgrade commercial 5G and public access. You could look at private 5G, or you could look at a mixture of LoRa, 5G, satellite together. We tend to look at, we talk about converged connectivity. So it's actually what you're using that for. Now, 5G will become viable if there's lots of data. You're going to need lots of data. You're going to need reliability, and that's a wider digital discussion, which I'm more than happy to have with you. Sorry.
So, as an example, we've got £25 million from Ofgem over the next 5 years to put out 12,000 sensors on our transformers and towers. Actually, we need to work out how to get that data back, and traversing that over our OT network is not even public 5G might for the sake of that's important data to us, but actually if we lose it, it's like
I mean, if you're putting that amount of sensors out with that amount of data, then 5G becomes a viable option. And and one of the challenges that we have is probably not so much a technical challenge. It is that commercial challenge, and that what's the business case for it. But actually, if what you're talking about, 25 million worth of sensors is going to be a lot of data, then 5G would be a viable option.
I think it's also not just necessarily one or the other. I think the two augment each other too. So you get the flexibility of both technologies. Yeah. So I don't think it's always just do we move from a purely into a purely mobile world. I don't think that's where we get to, and that's not the ambition. But I think there are definite flexibilities that and business process improvements that 5G can deliver for what you're talking about. We've been involved in that type of project before, and we know the kind of complexity that goes with it. It's the sensors we have deployed in the fourth era, again, exactly the same. We're taking all that data, bringing it back to data exchange, and then using that information to make real critical decisions. But again, it's a mixture of different technologies. So I think one probably augments the other, to be honest, as opposed to replaces it, yeah.
It's interesting, Julie, because I've actually sat beside an engineer and looked at the trunking, and it says when I started this job, there was like half a dozen cables, wires down on the bottom of this trunking wire, and it's jam-packed now, and they're basically just trying to shove the thinnest of cables up these things. Copper was only going to take us so far. Fiber optic, again, superb if you can actually get connected to it, but most people in rural areas can't. 5G gives you an option if you've got a transmitter in the area that's about the only achievable way of getting the amount of data across that you need. But is it going to be prioritized in rural areas which doesn't have an option?
I think you're right, is that it's an issue. I come from a background of, well, I'm that old. I've been at the start of every single wireless technology, which is a little bit worrying. But for me, it's about the right technology for the solution, and it's different elements. You know, that there are some cases where the reality is the fiber backhaul would never be cost effective, and that'll then preclude that rural area from being, connected. But Scotland's extremely active in the satellite space, so we've got to start exploring what does that mean to it. We've got to start prioritising these rural areas and giving them the voice they need that will allow them to then communicate with those that can build these networks for them and enable them to be connected. And it may be just a combination of technology that answers the problem for them. But 5G, you're right, is that first step where we can start connecting and transmitting that level of data that unfortunately these new IoT devices that are going to make a difference to so many of our lives are going to need. So we have to find the wherewithal, and we have to empower communities. We have to give them a voice so that they can demand to be connected. And that's part of what we have to do as a centre, is to actually go and help them verbalise what it is they like and need in that space. And for me, that is part of what we've got to do now, Mark. We've got to give those in those more rural, perhaps slightly more deprived areas, we've got to give them a voice so that they can come to the table, and stand an equal right of getting this connectivity brought to them. And I didn't hear all the question from SSE, but the likes of SSE, for me, they are also another way of us looking at how do we deliver some of that connectivity using some of their infrastructure. It's get outside the square now. It's look at it differently.
So can I just say, we are delivering some of that connectivity on demand, if you like, in partnership with people saying this is the reason why, and we're making commercial decisions to go and do that. So there's stuff going on as we speak that we will be deploying 5G into areas that weren't initially where we were going to go. So it does work, yeah. So we need to have that dialogue, yeah.
Yeah, I covered a story 5-6 years ago at the first rural parliament, which was held in Oban, and somebody said, have you spoken to the grannies that have been knitting fibre optic? And I said, what? And I can't remember which island it was, but they had a satellite downlink and they had fibre optic, and somebody had been watching the guy trying to stitch up the fibre optic cable and thought, that's a hell of a like my granny crocheting. So just out of curiosity and for a laugh, they brought 3 of the older women along, and it took them 20 minutes to learn how to do it. Just 20 minutes. And they went, yeah, it's fine, I can do that, no problem.
I was going to say, I've got open reach would employ them tomorrow.
Yeah, without a slightest backward glance. And what about his second point about the security of the system? If we become dependent on 5G, or some areas become dependent on 5G, is it going to be safe? Is it going to be secure?
So the easy answer is yes, right? It's as secure as the rest of our networks. Yeah, we've got all the, you've got to remember that we provide. Our networks are provided to people at the MOD, Defence. We keep our country safe on our networks. Yeah, so there's absolutely no reason to suggest that 5G and anything be any different. There was obviously some crazy stuff going on around the pandemic and things like that, which I think has been dealt with. But I think if you look at even now, it'll be put under scrutiny, I guess, with things like COP26. There's a lot that's going to be provided around that campus, and a lot of the connectivity will be provided through both fibre and 5G as well. And again, there's probably nothing more, more susceptible, or a period that's any more susceptible. So I think it will be proved very clearly that it's a very, very safe technology and very, very secure. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to round it up there, folks. Thank you very much to our speakers, Alan Lees, Simon Haston. Julie, thank you for your patience. I'm delighted we managed to get through to you eventually. Julie Snell there, Chair of the Scotland 5G Centre. And if I could just ask you to thank those 3 speakers one more time, please. Thank you. Okay, folks, that's lunchtime now, 50-minute break. Final session of the day, session 3 will be at 1:30. Just take the chance to wander around the exhibit hall and have a talk to some of the sponsors. Thanks very much. Enjoy your lunch.
That was great. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much.